Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, my name is Sephora, and on my channel I'll share everything from lifestyle to mini Bible studies, mini I would say sermons like this one. And the topic that we'll be talking about is really dear to my heart because it's something that I'm learning right now through God. It's something that God is teaching me right now, and it's about let go of the promise and hold on to the promise giver. And we'll be looking at two people in the Bible, David and Abraham, the father of faith. So let's dive in, let's not lose time, and get directly into the teaching. Let's first go to Abraham's story. Let's first read Genesis 12 verses 1 to 2 and then verse 7. The Lord had said to Abraham, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's house. Hold to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." And now let's go to verse 7. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." And so he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. So what we see is God is giving a promise to Abraham that he will give to his offspring, so the child of Abraham, his children, he will give the land where Abraham is going as possession. But the thing that you have to know is Abraham does not have a child. He does not have a child right now with his wife. They do not have children. None. Zero. So that is what God promises Abraham when he tells him to leave his country, leave his people, and go to where he wants him to go. And then let's now read Genesis 15 verse 1 to 4. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. "Do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield, your very great reward." But Abraham said, "Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus?" And Abraham said, "You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir." Verse 4. Then the word of the Lord came to him, "This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir." Remember the word your own flesh and blood. We'll come back to that later. So this time God is specifying his promise. At first he was saying your offspring, but now he's saying actually your own flesh and blood will inherit it, because some time has passed in the Bible. It's been 3 chapters later and Abraham still has no child. So he's like, "God, I know you're sovereign and all of that. You promised me one, but look, what can you do for me? I still don't have an heir, and my servant will inherit all of this that I have." But God promises and tell him don't worry, I will bless you with a son, your own flesh and blood. So that is the promise that God has given Abraham. Let's now go to David. Let's read 1 Samuel 16 verse 1 and then verse 12 to 13. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." So here we see God is telling the prophet Samuel, while he's still crying over Saul, "Get your ass up and go to Jesse's house, because I have chosen one of his sons to be king." Let's now go to verse 12. Oh, a little bit of context as, because we're not going to read all of it, but a bit of context as Samuel goes to Jesse's house. Jesse presents all of his sons one by one, but none of them that he presented God has chosen. So he's telling Jesse, "Do you have another son? Because God has rejected all of them. None of them is the one that God has chosen." And Jesse says, "Oh, I still have one. He's taking care of my sheep." And he's like, "Okay, call him, let him come." So now we'll read verse 12. So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." Verse 13. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Samuel then went to Ramah. Here we see God has promised these two people a promise. To Abraham, he has promised an offspring. And to David, he has promised that he'll be king. Both of them got a promise from God. God will still trust both of them with his promise, but the process is different actually. I'm not going to read it in detail, otherwise this video will be too long, but I really recommend you to read for the story of Abraham, Genesis chapter 16. Like, I think the first 5 verses, or you can read the whole chapter to get a full picture. And for David's story, I recommend you to read 1 Samuel chapter 24 and 1 Samuel chapter 26. Let's now focus on Abraham and see how he's going to handle, how he's going to behave towards the promise that God has given to him. Later, if we go to chapter 16 of Genesis, we actually see that Abraham completely lost patience. And I really recommend you to read Genesis chapter 16 to get like the full picture. But I'm just going to summarize it and put a little of my understanding and how I see it into it. But really go and read chapter 16 to get the full biblical story. That said, let's continue. Time has passed, still no child, still nothing. Barren Abraham, barren Sarai. So Abraham, well, it was Sarai's idea. She was like, well, until now I have no child. God has not gifted me one, so maybe I can get a child through my servant Hagar. So why don't you just sleep with her so that we can have a child through her? And Abraham was like, okay, God promised me a son, like my own flesh and blood. Maybe he meant through someone else, because if it comes out of someone else, it's still my flesh and blood. By the way, this is not what the Bible says. This is what I'm adding to it. So Abraham agrees to the idea of Sarai. He sleeps with Hagar. Hagar gets pregnant. Later on, Hagar has a son called Ishmael. What happens here is that God has promised to Abraham a son, but God never said that the son would come out of someone else. And later we see in Genesis chapter 17, verse 15 to 16, and that we're going to read. This is after that actually Hagar got pregnant and Ishmael is born. God also said to Abraham, as for Sarah, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. Verse 16. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. So at first we see the first promise that God gave to him was, oh, to your offspring I will give this land. And then the second promise is your own blood and flesh will inherit. And then this time God is like specifically like being very specific to Abraham, because he tried to fulfill the promise through his own understanding, how he saw it. But God is telling him this time specifically in verse 16, I will bless her, I will surely give you a son by her. So this time God is saying, the son that I promised you, the son that I said I will give you, the heir that I was going to give you is supposed to come out of Sarah. But before that, Abraham tried to fulfill the promise that God gave him, like, okay, you will have an offspring, your offspring will inherit the land, and so forth and so forth. And he still didn't see it being manifested. Like, he didn't see the fruit of it. He didn't see it with his own physical eyes. I think most people, most of us, I'm guilty of that certainly. When God promises me something, I lose patience. I try to like fulfill it in my own way, kind of saying, God, I know you promised that, but let me help you out so that it goes much faster. And I try to do it my own way, and then it becomes a much bigger problem than what it was supposed to be. That's not the focus. The focus is not on that. The focus is on how Abraham tries to like help God into fulfilling the promise that God gave him. He loved God, but the promise, I would say, he held much more dear. The promise was more important in his eyes than holding onto the word of the promise giver. When Sarah proposed that to him, he didn't consult God. It makes sense to him. So it was like, yeah, let's just do that. Let's just go with your plan. Now let's look at David. What we are actually supposed to do is what David did. God promised him a kingdom, but he didn't try to get kingdom in his own way. He waited patiently until God fulfilled the promise that he made to him. Let's read it. We won't read it because this video is getting too long and I don't want it to be too long. So first of all, we see years went by. David works for Saul and all that, and then Saul hates him. Saul is going after him, wants to kill him because the people of the land are loving David more than Saul and all that. He becomes jealous, blah 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 blah. Long story short, so David is fleeing from Saul. And David has like two opportunities where he can kill, and he could have thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity that God has given to me to become king. Let's just kill Saul and then the kingdom will be mine. Technically, that's a fulfillment of God's promise because God said, you will become king. So he'd become king, but the way of doing it wouldn't be according to God's will, because that's not how God wants him to become king, by killing someone else. The first opportunity that David gets to kill Saul is at the cave of En Gedi. That's found in 1 Samuel chapter 24. Like, go and read it. Read it to get a full context. At the cave of En Gedi, Samuel has to take care of his own needs. So he's like, okay, let me go there and take care of my business. And David was hiding actually in the cave, and his men that were with David were like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity that God has given you to kill him. He has put literally your enemy in your hands. And David was like, who am I to kill an anointed of the Lord? Like, God has anointed him, so I cannot touch him. So all David did was like cut a part of his cloth. And then Saul went out of the cave, and David was like, King Saul, King Saul, King Saul. Look, I could have killed you, but I didn't kill you. So why are you pursuing me? Why? Blah, blah, blah. Go and read it for yourself, people. That was opportunity one. David could have killed him and become king, but he didn't. Why not? Because he was like, I cannot lay my hands on the anointed of God. Yes, the fulfillment of the promise would have been very close if he killed the king, but he knew that if he killed the king, that went against God's word. For God said, you will not kill. And God never told him to kill Saul. So that wouldn't be God's way. And the second opportunity that he had to kill Saul was this time in the wilderness of Ziph. So at the camp, David had the second chance to kill Saul, but he still didn't do it. Still for the same reason. Saul is the anointed of God, and he cannot lay his hand on the anointed of God. That would go against God. So he didn't do it. Even though he could have said, well, it's the second time that I can kill him, so surely I should. His man with him was also telling him, if you want, I can pin him down and kill him for you. And it was like, don't. He's the anointed of God. We will not lay hands on him. It just took Saul's spear and another thing, and then went back and was telling Saul, Saul, look, I could have killed you, but I didn't. Go and read the story for yourself in 1 Samuel chapter 26. This is how Abram had to treat the situation with Sarah. So he could have said to Sarah, no, this is not God's way to do it, so we will just wait on the Lord. But he didn't. He tried to fulfill it in his own way because he lost patience. He held to the promise more dear than the promise giver. And here, the story of David would see that David, he prefers to honor the promise giver than trying to get the promise by his own doing. He knows that God promised him the kingdom, but he's not trying to get the kingdom through his own ways, which would be a way that goes against God. I hope that through the story you learn, just like how I learned actually, that we have to hold much more dear to the promise giver, do things according to God's way, his principles, and to know that God does not need our help to fulfill his promise. If he said he will do it, he will do it. You don't need to try and lay your hands on it, to focus on it, to try, okay, let me just help this, let me move this way and move that way so that things align for him. No, he's not asking you to actively fulfill the promise. He's the one that gave you the promise, so God will be the one that fulfills it. And his ways might not be like always, it might take time, but his way of doing it is much, much better. And we see actually how David gets the kingdom is not by killing Saul. The way that Saul and his children perish has nothing to do with David. David did not lay one hand on them. And if you want to know the full story, then I recommend you to read 1 Samuel chapter 31. That's where actually Saul dies together with his 3 sons, Jonathan and his 2 brothers. And then once Saul dies, David gets anointed as king over Judah. So his tribe of Judah calls him king. And the other parts of Israel, they are still under the reign of Saul's son. Ashbal is his name, if I'm not wrong, Ashbal. And After Ashbel dies, then David gets anointed as well as king over the other tribes of Israel. He became king just like how God promised. And the process of becoming king took a very long, but he kept trusting God. He believed the promise giver. He didn't try to like fulfill the promise by his own work, by his own doing, because you have to know the people really love him. He could have done a coup and taken like the power out of Saul's hand. He didn't. And he got like 2 chances to kill Saul, but he still didn't do it. He waited on God, and God really put him on the throne in a legal way and in a way that did not go against his own word. So that is what we have to do. We have to wait on God. When he gives us a promise, we have to wait, even if we don't understand it, we don't see it, and we're like, God, this is the perfect opportunity. You have to strike now to give us that. If God is not doing it, don't worry. He has a much better opportune time for it. And let's not be impatient like Abraham to create Ishmaels in our lives. Ishmael becomes the enemy of his brother, and the children of Ishmael fight against the children of Isaac. But if Abraham just waited patiently on God, then all of that would have never happened. So let's not lose hope. Let's not try to fulfill the promise by our own works, by our own doing, in our own understanding, but faithfully wait on the promise giver and keep our eyes fixed on the promise giver, not on the gift that he has promised, not on what he says he will give us. Because if we focus on the gift, then we'll lose track of him, and we'll try to do it in ways that will totally not honor him. So that's it for today. Don't forget to like, and please comment down below what you have learned through this video, and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this in the future. For now, I say goodbye and see you in the next one.